Welcome to the Biloxi City Council meeting of Tuesday, July 7th, 2020. We'd like to start with the invocation by Patrice Torselli from the United Coast Prayer Movement. Oh, there you are.
Let us pray. Dear wise and loving Father, we welcome you here with us tonight. Lord, we thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. We thank you for your many and abundant blessings. We thank you for our lives. We thank you for the great measure of health that we all need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance, for provision, for family, and for good working relationships, for respect for ourselves and for others, and for friendship. We thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. We thank you, Lord, as well for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. We thank you for loving us even so, from your boundless and gracious nature, always extending your mercy, grace, love, and forgiveness, regardless of how far we may wander or stray. In the scriptures, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. You also call us to pray for all those in authority. Therefore, we come before you and we pray a divine and supernatural equipping, especially for our mayor, Mayor Gillich, for the various levels of city officials and department heads, for all staff and employees in the city of Biloxi. In particular, we pray for this council assembled today. We thank you, Lord, that each council member was elected and selected and chosen for a time such as this. We are asking, Father, that you would graciously grant unto this council your boldness, your courage, your strength, your joy and your peace, your direction and your guidance. Order their footsteps, their decisions, and their words. Grant unto this council your wisdom, knowledge and understanding, discernment and revelation to govern amid the conflicting interests and all the issues of our times that we currently face and that they will face in the future. Grant unto this council a sense of the welfare and true needs of the people of our city, a keen thirst for justice, righteousness, and rightness, confidence in what is good and lovely and fitting. Grant unto this council the ability to work together in unity and in harmony and in peace, showing respect even when there is honest, peaceable, and civil disagreement and differing of opinions and passions. Grant unto this council personal peace in their lives, in all their decisions, and joy in all their tasks at hand. Lord, we pray for the agenda set before this council today. Please give an assurance of what would please you, Father, and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Biloxi. I invoke God's richest and most abundant blessings on the city of Biloxi and on the city council today as you serve the people of Biloxi. And it is in your most blessed and mighty and matchless name, Jesus, that we pray. Amen.
Nathan, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This will take us to the agenda order. Do I have a motion on the agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion by George Lawrence, a second by Nathan Barrett. Discussion. All in favor? begin with the presentation agenda.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor, your report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we appreciated the workshop that we had today on the initial revenues. I think we made some progress, and we know some things we need to get together on. We'll continue with that effort in the expense side of the ballgame. Again, we're finding our way through some times that are unsure with regard to the budget, but the next 30 days will give us a path. As far as the next 30 days and the COVID, I think our numbers, as far as about 31 per day, new cases in Harrison County is what we're kind of gauging things. We hope those numbers will go down in the next 4 or 5 days. We've continue to meet with the other mayors on a teleconference every week. And we were particularly I'm appreciative of what Dr. Steve Dimitropoulos from Pascagoula has had to say regarding where we are and where we need to be. Again, not overwhelmed as far as folks in the hospital are stressing that system, but it's amazing and that almost 40% of the folks who have this COVID are asymptomatic, and that was kind of troubling. And some of the effort as far as using masks, and it's not an infringement of rights but it's to help help our community overcome it. So I think masks are the key as we go forward. And again, that 40% kind of sends us a message that we want to protect everyone, and that is a way. So that's my little pitch, and I'll stick it to that. But I do want to, stress that these are times that we're going to be struggling through as far as closing the financial hole, and we don't want to take a step backwards as far as reopening and business in the future. That really concludes my report, except for asking you to spread the minutes, the expense of the Biloxi travel card to the minutes of this council. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That'll take us to council reports. Dr. Tisdale?
Yeah, a couple of things. I'd like to thank the council clerks for being able to work, I guess, with the company MCCI to get the city's minutes online faster, much faster, significantly faster. In the past, it was sometimes difficult to have access to minutes in the previous 6 months. Now, you can actually get online and see those minutes within a couple of weeks of the council meeting. So that's a big improvement. Hats off to the council clerks on that. The fact that we are where we are with this virus business, and I like to think we're all rational and reasonable people, but having been in the teaching business for a while and been a student where you have substitute teachers, not every child is rational and reasonable when dealing with a substitute teacher, for example. But also, we see that in our communities. We're a terrific country. We have great medical facilities. We have great emergency staff, medical staff, and yet we have a high COVID rate, and it can all be, I think, reduced significantly just by wearing masks. I would urge the mayor, and I'd mentioned this to him earlier, that maybe put out some metrics beforehand, looking at certain factors, and if we hit those thresholds, so to speak, that maybe this council and the administration might look at, yeah, you need to wear a mask if you're going into a business.
Right.
And if you're not, well, maybe the business owner shouldn't let you in. I hate to say that, and I don't think all of us agree with that right now. But my point being, if we're all going to be expected to act rationally and reasonably, I think it is wise to put some targets out there so that the public can see if we hit those
Right.
thresholds, then something else has to be done.
If I could comment on that whenever you're finished, but yeah, those metrics, right now we're looking at about, a month ago, we were looking at 4 and 5 new cases a day. Now we're at
Right.
31 and 32. I think we just reached a peak And I hope that 31 new cases per day in Harrison County is dropping. Went up a little bit today. I think went from 31 to 32 to 36. But the overall average was like 32 point something other. But we hope that's a plateau for Harrison County. I think we are. But, you know, not too very much further ago, we were at 1.97 per day over a 14-day average. So that's a big jump. I mean, you can just look at the numbers. And again, it was the subject that Dr. Dimitropoulos talked about, and that, you know, this has got to be considered, just protecting others, and that's a way to reduce these new cases. So I'm appreciative of that.
I guess the thing that concerns me most is if you're asymptomatic, and you may have it or may not, but if you do have it and you're asymptomatic, you may not feel bad, and you're taking it around with you wherever you go. I have an infant at my house. I'm in that vulnerable group now. Proud enough to say I've walked the earth long enough. I'm in that vulnerable group, but it's just, I don't think it's too much to ask the citizens of Biloxi to act rationally and reasonably and take those precautions that help us all. It's not a big thing. I don't want to make it a big thing. I don't think it's a political thing. I think it's a well-being and health thing, particularly if we're a tourist destination and have people coming and going. The mayor's right to look at those numbers, and all you need to know is the trend line. Is it leveling off? Is it declining, or is it increasing? And it's increasing right now. We had done very, very well earlier, but so had a lot of other communities. So I just think we need to watch the indicators, and it would really be nice if we could publicize, or the administration would consider publicizing whatever those thresholds are, that if these numbers are hit, we need to do something more than what we're doing now. The other concern that's associated with that is if we get to that point and we do something like that, then I think we need to look at how it's going to be enforced and what's the consequence going to be. But that's a future discussion at a later date. Hopefully we never get to that date and have to have that discussion, but I just think we all need to be a little more careful than we're being careful now. The other last comment I would make is that we had somebody test positive for coronavirus here 10 days, 11 days ago. And I went and was tested, and I know a number of employees, 40 or 50 city employees were tested. They went to medical analysis. We contract with them for wellness and some health services. And I think they tested those individuals, city employees, myself included. Monday, got the results back Tuesday afternoon. I had the antibody test just because I wanted to know. I have antibodies, and all that tells me is I've been exposed to a SARS-related virus, not necessarily COVID-19, sometime in the past, and I have antibodies. So this whole time I was thinking, if I have antibodies, I'm golden. No, no, that's not true. And there's still not a lot known about COVID. They're learning some things. But I did want to commend meta-analysis. They did a really good job and allayed a lot of fears and handled that testing issue and getting the results back discreetly, quickly, just did a super job. So I wanted to mention them. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Tisdale. Councilwoman Newman. Councilman Lawrence.
Yeah, to go back to what Paul was saying, this math drive you nuts, you know. But we're all going to rob a bank, you know what I mean? You still have to look at the numbers, and at the last three age groups, out of probably 80% here lately, the ones that been tested. So all the tests are way up. But the healthcare system itself, the ICUs, the ventilators, and most of those are down from last month. So a lot more people getting tested, a lot more people just negative. But I mean, that's a good thing. And the young people don't seem to have the problem as the older people like Bofo, you know. But I mean, we all went, just like I said, when it happened today, we all got tested, and 90% of us it's all negative. So that was a good thing. So, but I mean, nationwide, the healthcare system itself, the death tolls and everything is just shrinking. It's 90% less than what it was a month ago. That's high. So, but a lot more people being tested, but they're just not positive. And if they do have it, like you said, it's asymptomatic, and they really don't do much of anything. And anybody that knows anything about viruses, they understand now where they mutate. And the more they mutate, they get weaker. They're still out there, but it mutates itself down, and that's how it eliminates itself. And that's the way it's at right now. So it is breaking up. People still get it, and even when they get it now, they don't even seem to have not even a bad case of the flu where, but at the beginning, it was pretty bad, you know. So that's enough on the medical field. We got to go back to the 4th of July with a great display of fireworks. It was awesome. You know, we wanted the largest shoot in the southeast area because a lot of people canceled, and we was at number 2, but we won at number 1, and they went down there. A lot of people on the beach. People enjoyed it. Great show. It's awesome. It's good that the city's part of this. It's the Boom Boom Club that does it, but the city and the county, you know, puts up money to help fund this thing. But it's a great thing to celebrate Independence Day. And going to that, this country here right now is a great country. We got a great city, a great mayor, got a great councilman. We here and elected to protect the people and protect their property. And to do that, you have to have a strong public safety, the police department, the fire department. So all these people want to talk about the bad things about the police. They need to talk about the good things they do. And there's a lot of things that's done well in the city of Biloxi and all over the country. And the people trying to destroy the country is the worst thing in the world. What they're doing is Marxism. They want to socialize medicine. They want to socialize everything. They don't want to hit the history of the United States brought forward. You only come from where you came from. The history is part of what it is. Was it all great? No, probably not. Did it all get better? Yes, it did. Are we studying and improving? Yes, we are. So you got to think that we live in the greatest country in the world, and that's the United States. And we're lucky enough to live in the city of Biloxi. And I feel the same way my councilman feels, and the mayor. We here for the people, and to help the people, and to protect the people. So that's a little take on that for that. How's that sound?
That sounded great, and thank you. When
Yeah,
you,
right.
you said we have a great city and a great mayor and a great councilman. You nodded your head towards me, so I appreciate that. Councilman Barrett.
I just have a couple things. Christy, on the canals, do you know the extent to where, what they're going to be cleaning out? I've gotten several calls this week of other people that the stuff's still setting. I know that I see them out there working, but are they just going to be in that area, or is that something that they're going to move and get all those areas that have that stuff backed up in there?
And Ms. Labata, when you step to the mic, would you state your name and your position, please?
Christy Labata, is it on?
It is.
Okay. Christy Labata, City of Biloxi, City Engineer. I do not know the extent that they're going with the cleaning of all the debris in the canals, because Mike talked to that contractor, and
Okay.
I have not coordinated with him, but I will get with Mike and get you an answer on that.
Okay. Yeah, I just gotten several calls of other people. They said, we see them down there cleaning. Do you know if they're coming to our area? We can't get our boat in or out because of all the stuff log jammed in.
All
So,
I think the man-made canals is where we got authority to go. So I'm not sure whether, you know, if it just happens to be on a cut or somewhere that's not part of the man-made system. But that's what we got a clearance from DMR to do, and said, go knock yourself out. And
yeah.
so we.
I'm pretty sure that everything on that east side of the peninsula of Eagle Point, everything on that east side, I'm pretty sure is man-made. That isn't part, everything off of the river, I think was cut in whenever they developed that subdivision.
I think so, and I'm pretty sure all of that canal was getting cleaned, but
Okay.
I don't know about any other areas. There may be more areas than that, and I don't know.
Okay,
But I'll find out for you.
all right. That's
Is that
all.
about 50,000, is that what we
Go
spent?
ahead.
Something like that. 50, something like that. Yeah.
Ms. Labata, before you walk away, at the close of this meeting or tomorrow, will you send me the language about the underwater vegetation so I can update the people in my ward about our hurdles we have to overcome? Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
And the only other thing that I have is I would like to echo what George said, seeing all the stuff going on around our country. I'm thankful that I live in Biloxi. We're really blessed. So, we're blessed to live in a great city. That's all.
Thank you, Councilman Barrett. Councilman Guines?
Should be. Good. See if this.
Grab the other mic.
All right, there we go. I'm online now. Like what George said, great city, great mayor, great councilman, and echo what everyone else said. Yeah, I'm a little concerned also with the COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic that we're having here. I believe that my community is one of the older communities around, and a lot of grandparents that are raising young kids. And of course, according to listening to the national news, it's being spreaded by the young kids. A lot of young kids are out playing basketball, and now we're heading into football season, so a lot of contact sports. So I am worried about that, and maybe the city, we may need to look at the possibility of doing another test and opening up some testing like we did a couple of months ago. So I just wanted to throw that out just in case. I would also like schedule a meeting with the mayor and Walt for Monday so we can do some of the wrap up on
North contract.
the East Side contract. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilman Guines. I don't have much of a report, just a brief recap. Councilman Tisdale says masks are good, America's good, Biloxi's good, and kids are bad. Just kidding. No, for those of you that missed the budget meeting, we had a riveting discussion of revenues, and just to further on our discussion, I think we're in a good place. For those of you that weren't here, we're one of the few locations on the coast that's open and have less stringent restrictions on economic activity, and so I think we're going to see great numbers for the next few weeks. Thank you for the earlier meeting. I look forward to the next one. And with that, we'll move on to the public agenda, citizens' comments. We'll have 45 minutes total, 3 minutes per person. I'm going to start with the people on my left-hand side of the room, on my left-hand side, your right-hand side of the room. If anyone wants to speak, please come up to the microphone and state your name and address.
Hello, my name's Scott Allen, and I have a property at 4071 Lick Skillet Road.
I'm sorry, was that Mr. Allen?
Yes, Allen,
Okay, thank you.
A-L-L-E-N. Do I need to sign in?
Yes, please.
And we wanted to talk about the opportunity for short-term rental. We live in an agricultural property with really no neighbors. There's one person, and we're not able to do short-term rental. But given the situation with COVID, I think it's more important than ever that we look at situations that we can bring people to the coast safely, not in a large hotel or in a group situation. And we find the type of people who are looking for our property or looking for a VRBO are families that don't feel comfortable going to a casino. That's not what they're wanting to do. And so I would think it'd be very good for the city and good for the economics of the city to really consider that short-term rental.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Mayor, if I may add, I want to follow up on that. Do we have a mechanism in which somebody that's not within one of our approved areas can apply for an exception?
Possibility of getting that approved, in that area.
What I heard was that his property is zoned agricultural. He'd like to take a look at maybe allowing short-term rental in agricultural zoning, what that would take as a text change.
Well, if we didn't do a text change, we could do a text change, but is there a way to add some form of amendment that allows for special consideration to things that don't fall within the typical elements of what we don't want? And so if he's not within a residential area, it's not going to affect a neighborhood, it's not going to affect neighbors. It feels like he might be suitable for some type of exception. I'm not suggesting that we do approve that specific location right now. What I'm suggesting is that we have a mechanism to address certain specific unique properties.
I can discuss that with Mr. Abide. Special exceptions, the main concern you run into when you're doing a special exception is that you're going to have to be able to justify it, and you're going to have to create criteria where determining how is it allowed here and it's not allowed here. So we've always tried to avoid special exceptions for that reason. But a simple text change in the ordinance, and you know, we mentioned this before, that there are properties that are on the rivers and in the back bays, that if you're a certain distance from the water, maybe we do need to consider short-term rental, maybe an overlay district or something like that to allow it. So we'd be happy to take a look at that, and I'll discuss that with Mr. Abide.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Brewer. I apologize. We'll return to public comments. Anybody on this side of the room? Ma'am, if you would please come to the front. State your name and address and sign in for us.
My name is Donna Bernard. I live at 135 Pine Grove here in Biloxi.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
It's Donna, and the last name is Bernard, B-E-N-A-R-D.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard.
Can I sign in first, or do I do that after?
I think you're good.
And forgive me for having to read, but I had to throw something together very late last night because I was not aware of this meeting until last night. So I'm here representing many residents of Biofield neighborhood, and this is in direct conjunction with Frank Zhang's request to add additional temporary housing and to the tune of 48 units. We have been inundated by temporary rentals, both legal and illegal, within this neighborhood. We are a very small area with only 2 roads that go on to Highway 90, and that's our only access in and out. Adding 48 units in close proximity to all of these other locations, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Mr. Zhang was approved for 6 units that are short-term within another building of 30 apartments that he built. Now this new 48, he wants approval for all 48. I ask you, City Council, that is not, he is not following requirements to make this a hotel. Are you collecting city taxes based on a hotel? We have Treasure Bay, 1.3 miles. We have Quality Inn there. We have Motel 6 there. We have an RV park that was just built there. We are being encroached in our neighborhood by all of this temporary living. And I will explain to you, having been there over the last several years, that these temporary livers do not care about the city of Biloxi. They come in, they make their disaster, and then they go home, and they never think about it again. I've been in situations in this small neighborhood where you have a temporary living house, legal and illegal, both in this neighborhood, and we'll have 20 to 30 to 40 people in one unit. And it creates a problem in the neighborhood. It creates a disruption in day-to-day lives of our people. Paul can tell you, we've gone through this before, the traffic in that small neighborhood is on average 400 to 500 cars a day. And when the Coliseum lets out from that back entrance, we're talking 700 to 800 cars a day. I am asking the City Council to really seriously consider if we need another set of 48 temporary living units in this neighborhood. We don't. We care about the neighborhood. We're a resident. We want equal treatment. We want to be treated. I love Biloxi because it's a tourist town. It's the reason I came here. But I also didn't come here to have my property trashed during these events. I also did not come here to always feel like the tourists are more important. And that's how most of the residents in this neighborhood, many who've lived there their whole lives, feel that we are second-class citizens to the tourists. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. If you would please come to the front, state your name and address, and sign in for me.
Hi, my name is Vicki Grider. I'm a resident of Biloxi my whole life. And I live in the Biofield subdivision as well. I live further north than Miss Bernard, and so I don't get to see everything that's happening in that area, except for when I come and go to my house, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't sign in yet. Hang on. One day I'll be able to do two things at one time. I do agree and echo exactly what she just expressed. It's like we have been over-concentrated as far as tourists pushed on us. And there are some residents back there. I've lived in my house for 30 years. I like living back there. You know, I got God country in front of me with all that Gulf of Mexico. So with that being said, the property that this man has is going to go behind 3 other properties, okay? So it's like if you start from the south, he's going to be on Biofield, then it kind of makes an L, and I know I'm using my hands, sorry, I teach school. So it's going to go behind another house that they're previously trying to sell. There's a vacant land that used to be a house there, and then there's another house on the other side of it. So I guess my question is, how can that be ingress and egress followed when both of them are going to be on Biofield, and the ones that are in the back, behind the houses, isn't that like a safety issue as far as trying to get fire trucks and police and stuff like that in there? Anyway, these are just questions that I have that hopefully you will consider. If you know the answer to them, great. If you don't, please find out before you take this issue underhand and vote for this to be approved. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. And again, please state your name, your address, and sign in for me. Andre, will you spell your name for me and speak into the mic? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hugh. Do I have anybody else? Please come to the front, state your name and address, and sign in for me.
I'm sorry, sir, your time is up.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else on the right-hand side of the room that would care to speak? If you would please come forward. If you would state your name and address and sign in for me. You say Ms. Crawford? Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Mrs. Crawford, first off, thank you for your work and your compassion, and rest assured that we discuss this issue frequently and we grapple with our homeless concerns more than I think you understand. Mr. Tisdale, did you have something to say?
Miss Crawford, there's a lady you should meet in this room before you leave tonight. Her name is Mary Simons, and she is right there. And the city has a relationship with Miss Simons, and we're working on these issues that you spoke about. So it just so happens fate has put Miss Simons in the right spot at the right time. Okay? Thank you, Miss Crawford.
Do we have anybody else on your right-hand side of the room that would care to speak? Is there anybody else on the left-hand side of the room, my right-hand side, that would care to speak? Anyone in the back? There being none, I have a couple submitted public comments that I would like to read. I think a couple of the pleas that I made to the public about not being able to be here, they've responded via email. So if I would like to honor them and their absence by reading their comments. First, from Helen J. Lee. She says, "Thank you for contacting us regarding this important issue. Unfortunately, because I'm a senior citizen and fall in the vulnerable population for COVID-19, I will not be attending the council meeting. Our Airbnb is a single-family home currently located in a commercial zone, which at this time does not have any restrictions for short-term rental. To the best of our knowledge, our Airbnb remains in an area zoned commercial. We take pride in our Airbnb, making sure that the property is well-maintained and conforms to city and community ordinances. Our Airbnb has been a life-changing experience for our family. We meet a broad spectrum of people visiting the Gulf Coast for business and pleasure. Some visitors have become close associates and others simply fall in love with the city and cannot wait to return. We feel that our Airbnb provides an expanded opportunity for economic growth and revitalization of our neighborhoods and small businesses. Airbnbs have helped to fuel the tourism industry, bringing needed revenue to neighborhoods and local businesses. Airbnbs also provide additional jobs and needed funds to family households to meet daily expenses, especially during these difficult times of COVID-19. We are in favor of continuing the current policy of short-term rental, especially in commercial zones. Again, thank you for allowing us to participate in this important discussion. Respectfully, Helen J. Lee." I am not a storyteller, so I do the best I can. Thank you, Helen, if you're watching. Secondly, from Andrea Palmero. "We have a waterfront home in an agricultural zone treated the same as a residential area. What I've noticed since renting our home is that the typical Airbnb VRBO renter is looking to feel at home while they're away, and the typical hotel is not set up like a home. I've had several inquiries for short-term rentals that I've had to turn down due to this, and my property is definitely unique. It is not in a neighborhood, and I have one neighbor that would possibly be affected, so I have strict rules in place to accommodate my neighbor. Most people who are against short-term rentals do not understand the clientele. The clientele that wants a short-term rental will most likely want to stay anywhere from 3 to 7 days and want a home for the ability to save money on meals and have privacy as if it were their home. The average owner does not have time for all the regular daily turnover. Does not have time for the regular daily turnover that hotels are better suited to do. That guest should stay in a hotel and most likely only chooses a home rental because the price is better. Homes are set up to serve families, whereas most hotels do not even offer family suites. You are lucky if you can even get a connected room during a busy event weekend. These renters feed into our local grocery stores, restaurants, and casinos, and if they can get a home rental in Biloxi, then they're far more likely to rent in an Airbnb VRBO-friendly city, such as if they can't get one in Biloxi, they're more likely to rent one in Pass Christian or states such as Florida. And then Biloxi loses out on the economic value that these renters would bring to our city. Also, with COVID-19, families traveling feel more secure in private homes rather than hotels, where they have to be around people in elevators, floors, etc. We depend highly on tourism and spend a good deal of money on maintaining our beaches that are comparable to Florida with less traffic, and yet We lose a lot of business by not having the same offerings of Airbnb and VRBO homes that they have to offer. I have had long-term rentals who have done more damage to property and devalued neighborhoods more than any short-term renter has had the chance to do. Should a short-term renter become a problem for a neighbor, the owner has more leeway to evict the renter to appease the neighborhood and decrease possible damage. There is a definite need for Airbnb VRBO rentals that fall into a category such as mine, and the actual renter should not be considered more of a problem than any bad long-term rental. I would highly advocate for opening up more abilities to do short-term rentals. Thank you. And that's Andrea Palmero. That should conclude our public comments. We'll move on to the policy agenda. Ordinance A.
Ordinance to amend the Biloxi LDO to amend permitted or conditional uses within the WF Waterfront District.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by George Lawrence. Do I have a second? Seconded by Paul Tisdale. This is the first reading. We'll move to ordinance B.
Ordinance to amend Section 2367C4 of the LDO to address the modification of text-related establishments of standards for fences and easements.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Paul Tisdale. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by George Lawrence. Again, that's the first reading. We'll move to ordinance C.
Ordinance to amend non-residential and planned development districts for low-density multifamily residential district.
Thank you, Lucy. Do I have a motion on C?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion by Paul Tisdale. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by George Lawrence. Again, that's a first reading, so we'll move to ordinance D.
Ordinance to amend the LDO to amend, regulations pertaining to short-term rental and timeshare uses.
I'll move it.
We've got a motion by George Lawrence. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Paul Tisdale. That is a first reading as well. Our final ordinance, E.
Ordinance for a change in zoning for NB neighborhood business and RM30 high-density multifamily residential to I industrial for properties identified as 211 Esther's Boulevard and an unaddressed parcel fronting to Magnolia Street.
I'll make that motion.
We've got a motion by Felix Kynes.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Paul Tisdale. Again, that's a first reading. We'll move to resolutions. F.
Resolution to grant conditional use for Beach Vista Apartments located at 133 Biofield Avenue.
Do I have a motion?
Which one is that one?
We are on F.
Resolution, right?
Resolution F, yes.
I'll make a motion for discussion purposes.
I have a motion by Paul Tisdale. Do I have a second? I will second that. It's on the table.
We'll second if you want to talk about it.
All right. Did you want to second that, Mr. Lawrence? Councilman Tisdale?
Yeah, Mr. Creel, I have some questions. This is for the proposed 48-unit apartment complex that would be used as short-term rentals. They are off, I guess it's the address, it's an empty lot, 133 Biofield, and then significant parcel behind that to the west that runs behind, as was explained earlier, maybe 3 additional lots, maybe a 4th lot, 1 or 2 structures there. How many short-term rentals are now permitted to operate in Biloxi? We've permitted how many? Right, and I would suspect, but you would know better than I, or might have a better feel for it. Do you feel there are still short-term rentals operating out there that are not permitted? We have an administrative court for those that violate this, and there are fines involved if they don't get right with God, so to speak. Okay. If in looking at this, and maybe the other council members can help me, I don't recall ever having a complex this size as an apartment to be used for short-term rentals. So to some extent, this would be a precedent. Would that be accurate? Okay, thank you. Will there be a manager living on site, or do we know that at this point? All right, would it have any amenities that, say, because that's a good way to put it, a hotel or a motel, only it's not a hotel or motel, it's a 48-unit complex. Will it have any of the amenities, or is it expected to have any amenities that a hotel or motel would have? Something, but there's no guarantee of that. It may not, may just be 48, right, just could be 48 units. It's going to be several stories, I think, I would assume. Okay. What is the difference exactly between a structure of this type for short-term rentals and a hotel or motel? Okay, so it's kind of a horse of a different color at this point, and you're making some adjustments. The city is making some adjustments. I don't want to say allowances. You're trying to act reasonably because you don't know if this may be the first of several complexes like this, or. Yes, sir. As I recall, this same developer built a complex of apartments, came back later and asked the council, and it was approved on a split vote to designate a number of those units as short-term rentals. So this, okay, and I'm curious because at the time I felt like if that what's now established was going to be used for short-term rentals, I really felt like, because he came back after the fact, after the construction, and I felt like, because I attended the planning commission meetings, and I felt like he should have just said, I want to put a hotel or a motel there. Yes, sir. Right. Thank you. Is there a difference in the amount of taxes generated, whether this is a short-term rental complex as proposed, or the difference might be if it were a hotel or motel? Would it make any difference in the ad valorem tax?
The taxes will be higher for short-term rental. One of the things that we do is to notify the tax assessor how the property is being used, and they will assess that at a higher rate than for an apartment complex.
Okay. All right, and I think I have this right, for hotel, motel rooms that are secured, they pay a portion, or they pay a tax that goes to the Coliseum. Is that the,
So will it go to the street?
each of there's a room tax to help pay off, I think, the Coliseum bonds and all that. Would these short-term rental units, as proposed, would they pay that same tax, do you know?
Well, that would be my understanding. Any short-term rental is supposed to be paying the same tax as the hotels.
That's, okay. Now, the one lot that the developer owns, I think the address is 133 Biofield. I think it's on the west side, and that would allow ingress and ingress to the property. So that lot basically would be just an entry and exit, so that whoever's going to stay at these short-term rentals could go in there and park. But they go in at that entrance, they go out at that entrance. Does that raise an issue in terms of the fire department? Or is that a concern?
Again, the way that the ingress and egress is supposed to work, and again, this hasn't been the DRC.
Right.
These issues have not been addressed, but the way that it's supposed to work is if you take the diagonal of the property and you divide that by two, those entrances and ingress and egress are supposed to be half of the diagonal of the overall property. They have a challenge here. Off of that one lot and then outside, we'll just have to.
Right. All right, when he goes to the DRC, we don't know when that's scheduled yet. DRC meets every Wednesday. And so he will make one of those agendas, and at that point, that meeting is open to the public, although it's not a question and answer session for the public, but they can go in and observe. And at that time, it's entirely possible, based on what you just said, whether the gyrations that go through determining whether you need a second point of ingress or egress, it may be possible that he just can't make the numbers work.
That's very possible, and the burden is on the applicant to comply with the regulations in the ordinance.
In which case, it either, I don't know how that's going to be situated on the property. That's why they have the DRC. That's why he goes to the DRC. But he could purchase some more property somewhere adjacent for ingress or egress, or he could change the design. Could he increase the number of floors, the height? Are we limited in height at that point?
He's limited to the height that's allowed in RM30 zoning. I think he's probably going to be right at that height when he comes in with his proposal. Again, we haven't seen the drawings yet, but he could acquire more property for an ingress, egress, or he could work out an agreement with an adjacent property owner on an easement that he could put a separate drive-through.
Right. So there are options. It may be tight and he makes it work, or it may be it's too tight and he can come up with another arrangement.
Yes,
with
sir.
some of his neighbors. Okay. Currently, we have one person that is tasked with kind of keeping up on the city's end of monitoring and enforcing short-term rentals. Would that be accurate?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And is one person enough? Again, you're more familiar with this issue than I am. Is one person enough to do all this, that can check out complaints, that can report, enforce, et cetera?
Right now, he's been able to do the job. He and I spend a lot of time together going over questions, about
Right.
Is this a violation? Is it not a violation? What do we need to do to bring them into compliance? So I spend a good deal of time with him discussing that. But as of right now, with the number of units that we have approved, yes, he's been able to do the job.
Okay.
So, and we may have to look at that later on as the number of units increase, which I fully expect to happen.
Right, and probably, I don't know, when we first got into this short-term rental business, there was much discussion for those who weren't around at the time. It was a couple of years, 2 or 3 years ago. And at that time, we had none permitted in the city, and we worked through a lot of these issues, and it's not perfect, but folks are now permitted if they meet the requirements, they qualify and are eligible, and then annually, they have to provide some documentation.
That's correct.
In order to get that permit renewed, and the permit is $100 per unit.
Right now, yes, sir, it is.
Okay. All right, so if I want to have a short-term rental, currently, as long as I'm zoned appropriately, I just go into the DRC, present my site plan, get it approved, we're good to go.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. That concludes my questions, finally, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tisdale. Do we have, I've looked through the resolution when I read over this, and I'm confused about the plot. It may be me, but I can't decipher from the exhibits exactly which portion of property is going to be developed. Is there any way we can put it on the screen?
That's it. We don't have the overhead camera, so we'd have to.
I could take it around to everybody in the I'll give it to the
Well, at least let me take a look at it so I can articulate at least what I'm talking about.
If you'll go to the map in the packet, I think I can show you.
No, this resolves the question that I had. When I looked at the map, I couldn't determine which one, but
If you have this in your packet,
I do have that, but this is an expanded view with the Grand View because I couldn't tell the distance between the property and Grand View and the other potential access point.
okay, I see what you're asking.
Right.
Yes,
One of my questions is, I don't have any other examples other than the Affordable Care Act. When Justice Roberts ruled on it, he said they can tax you with it, but it's not a tax. It's a penalty, but it's not really a penalty because it acts like a tax. And if it acts like a tax, you can tax it, even though it's not a tax and it's a penalty. And so, is this really a hotel, or is it an apartment? Or is it an apartment getting the rules to act like a hotel, which is a hotel that actually could be apartments if it wanted to? So my question is, are we in this because he doesn't want to attempt to change the zoning and actually comply with zoning? Or is this really an apartment and he doesn't think he can fill the units, so he wants to have a fallback to keep capacity up? I'm trying to decipher what it really is, because when you talked about the codes and what he has to do to comply, it almost sounded like he should just be a hotel. With that many units on one development, it should be a hotel, but now he doesn't have to do certain things because it's not really a hotel, even though it's one development with so many units. And when I asked about making exceptions earlier, it's because I really want to make sure that we're applying these equally, and there's a fair application of the spirit of what our intent is. And I don't know that our intent is to create hotels and call them short-term rentals just so they can end around other rules or requirements that hotel operators or other people have to comply with, or taxation and things like that. I just want to be clear on what the purpose is for the approach that he's taking.
I'm not sure what his motivation is. Both of those could be his motivation, that he doesn't want to go through the zoning change, which would require a public hearing, but he still had to go through a public hearing for the conditional use. So, that doesn't really make sense. The other side is, maybe he does want to have the structure built so that if for whatever reason the short-term rental doesn't work out, he can always revert back to apartments, or he might decide at some point to do half and half. Either way, he has an argument for a zoning change. I mean, he's right next to CB zoning, you know, so it would be an extension of a zoning that already exists. He would have a good, strong argument for getting that through.
And if he was CB zone, and that's what I was looking at, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but he would have a good argument for it. And if it was CB, then he wouldn't even have to go through the process. If he could accomplish CB, then he could essentially by right have short-term, correct?
If the property was on CB, he could build it as an apartment building, but he could use it as a use by right for short-term rental. So I don't know what his motivation is on this, but I do know that, you know, we have an old saying in planning, you know, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck. And that's the reason that the fire department and the building department, when we review the building plans on this, we're going to look at it as a hotel.
I think if we're going to look at it as a hotel, I think we should require it to comply with the rules, any rules that a hotel would have to comply with.
That's what we're going to do,
including the
yes.
zoning. And this would not be an appropriate zone for a hotel. Am I correct?
Well, if he were to come in and say, I want to build a hotel on this property, he would have to have a zoning change.
Correct. And that's what I was getting at. You know me, I'm probably the most pro do what you want to do with your property on this council. However, it still has to act like a duck if it's a duck. Like I said, the spirit of the intent has to hold true with everything that we apply these rules to. If we're going to apply rules, I think they should be, you know, applied fairly. I'm going to open the floor to any further discussion. Ms. Newman?
First, is Mr. Zhang here?
I haven't seen,
Is Mr. Zhang in the room?
no, he's not here.
Okay. And number two, why would this be coming to us now and not after the DRC?
Because I think the decision that's made here is going to determine whether or not he builds the project at all. And he wanted to know that
A lot
he
of
had.
those factors, you know, would be into play in our decision, so.
That's true, but there's not a requirement in the ordinance that says you have to go to DRC before you submit a request. It's the same way with a zoning change. If we required a person to do their design before they came in for a zoning change, number one, they're going to spend an exorbitant amount of money putting together those site plans and building plans to do that, and they just don't want to pay that investment until they're at least comfortable that they've got the zoning in place. And a lot of times, banks are not going to lend money to a developer unless they know at least that the zoning is correct for what they're wanting to do.
It's also hard to get approval when you don't know all the facts, too. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Newman. Councilman Barrett?
Jerry, I had someone call me recently about a project in this area. Is this the same guy that owns the rentals on the beach?
No.
Okay, different, okay.
No, this is not him. No.
My second question is, and I had to step out the room for just a second on identifying this property. This property, the only road that they would have access to would be Biofield, correct?
At this time, yes, sir, that's correct.
I was just looking at the map and I couldn't figure it out completely. And I tend to agree with Robert on this, and Dixie. First of all, he doesn't even know if he can build this project based upon the one entrance. You got to have two entrances based upon the distance from the, you know, corners of the property. I think that, I don't know if we deny it, or from my standpoint, I don't know if we deny it today, or maybe we table this until we know more as to intent and things like that. I agree with Robert. If he's going to basically build a hotel, this is the wrong process. We shouldn't approve or deny this. He needs to apply for a zoning change if he's going to build a hotel. That's just, and I'm sort of in the same boat as Robert when it comes to short-term rentals. I've been very pro-term rental, but or pro-short-term rental, but I don't think. Paul hit on this a little bit earlier. It looks to me like he's trying to cheat the system to get to where he's trying to go, and I think that either we table it or deny it because we don't know all the facts, and I don't believe that the route that he's taking is the right route to get the result that he wants. Just, it's my,
Mr. Barrett, I agree, and I was gonna, you jumped, my intentions. I think that we've been very lenient and given a lot of leeway to other applicants. If you make a motion to table it subject to call until we get some resolution on some of those issues, I'll second.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Barrett has made a motion to table this subject to call. It's been seconded by Councilman Deming. Discussion?
Yes, I'd prefer we go ahead and deny it or not approve it at this time. And here's why. And I am very pleased that I agree with you and Nathan, because we know that happens once in a blue moon, don't we?
It does.
So I'm rethinking my position. No, I think, well, and here's why I say that. We started with same developer. I think he built 48 units, Jerry?
Yes, sir.
We're currently on Biofield. And
He built 30 in the first
30.
development.
30 in the first development, and then came back and said, oh, you know, I want to make some of these short-term rentals. And it was a split vote last time, and it was approved on a split vote. I think George and I were the two that voted against it. For this same reason, you're basically trying to turn this complex you've built into a hotel without calling it a hotel. And now what we're seeing is pushing the envelope a little farther. Well, I understand pushing the envelope, but if you're going to do that, and this is what bothers me so much about zoning. Somebody wants something rezoned to do something, and we vote on it. Sure, we approve it, and then sometimes what happens is what was going to go there doesn't end up going there. It's something else that goes there. That may have raised an issue with some of us, but it's too late after the fact. It doesn't happen much, but it happens some. And my concern here is that if we table it right now, rather than deny it outright or not approve it, that I'll just leave it at that. I just think we should deny it at this point. So I'm on the same page with you both. I would prefer not to table it. I would prefer to not approve it or deny it. And if the developer wants to go and pursue this, then let him go about it the right way, which is what should have been done before we split those apartments and allowed short-term rentals on some units in that apartment complex. That's my preference, and I hope you would give my opinion some weight since it's in Ward 5, but you're free to vote your conscience.
So with us tabling this and saying that he would have to come back to get a change of zoning anyway, this would be a completely different case. So tabling it wouldn't even help, is that correct?
Well, you can table it, and you can put a couple of different stipulations on it. You can say, we're going to table this and, you know, let you go get apply for a zoning change, or you could table it until he goes through DRC, and we have some more answers to the questions that have been raised today. Now, by the same token, I have to inform you, if you deny it, then he would not be able to come back with this application again for a year unless there's a significant change to the application.
But he could come and request a zoning change on the property.
He could do that, yes.
Okay, I'm going to follow, I'll withdraw my motion to table, and I'll follow Mr. Tisdale's lead. It's his ward. I'm going to follow his lead on this, and I'm going to withdraw my motion.
I'll withdraw my second. I'm not as eager to blatantly deny it when I have so many questions.
You gonna make it around this way? I was just
Councilman
wondering. I'm sitting over there. I was just curious.
Okay.
I had a few questions. Didn't we have an ordinance in that at one time? Didn't we have something in place at one time with the short-term rentals with 4 or more? from an apartment complex. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
At one time, there was a provision in the ordinance that said you couldn't have more than 4 units on any one single parcel of property, and that was removed.
So
It was removed at the time that we were discussing the apartment complex that's down near Rodenberg, where they wanted the whole complex to convert over, and it was already zoned for what they were asking to do.
Gotcha.
So that was removed during one of the hearings.
Okay, and my other question is, what kind of rationale did the plan, obviously the planning commission was okay with it, for it to get this far?
I don't know specifically. To be honest, I was surprised that it passed 8-4. I thought the vote would have been a lot closer. But there were not a lot of questions asked. If you look at the minutes that are in the packets, there were very few questions asked about it.
Okay.
I think the way they looked at it is it's a short-term rental. The ordinance says the application for short-term rental, the ordinance says it's allowed as a conditional use in RM30 zoning. He has RM30 zoning, so, you know, it should be allowed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for recognizing me.
Robert,
Just throw something at me next time, man. Sorry.
Robert, Mr. Creel, I mean, if we deny this, he can come back with actually a plan anytime he wants.
I was going by what,
And whatever this crazy stuff is right now,
Okay.
which is really nothing. And you said that about 6 times already. You don't even know where he's going with it yourself, and you've been dealing with this. So if we deny what's on the table now, that's not killing anything. Then maybe the guy will come back and actually bring a project to the council and the planning commission the right way. You're not killing anything. But now here, you got this broad spectrum, anything. You do what you want. Do it this way, do it that way, do it this way, whatever you want.
I was just
Let's
stating
bring a
what-
project.
I was just stating what the ordinance says. The
I know.
Land development
I know.
ordinance says that if an application is denied, it can't come back for a year unless there's a significant change to the application.
Yeah, if they actually come back with a project, there'll be a change, because there is none right now. There's nothing on the table but 3 options. That's what you're voting on. Or we supposed to be voting on it, not you.
Right.
So, I mean, if we deny it, it's not a big deal.
I'm
Don't
not trying to
kill
talk
nothing.
you out of anything. I'm just trying to make sure you're aware of.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, you know, let a man come back and bring us something. This is what I'm planning on doing. Then we'll look at that.
I'm actually, I actually kind of like the table idea and give them an opportunity. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Point of order, Mr. President. What if I withdrew my motion, and if you were to withdraw your second?
It would be removed from the floor, and it would fail for a lack of movement.
For lack of a motion, and if we did that, that's one way to accomplish this matter.
Correct. I
Would
don't
you-
know, does that,
Would you consider withdrawing your second if I withdraw my motion?
I will withdraw my motion.
I withdraw my motion, you withdraw your second.
Do I have a motion to put it on the floor? I think we have a legal opinion that's creeping our way.
So that's what they look like, huh?
That is, they're usually less attractive than that.
Peter A. Budd, city
Legal
attorney. I will now identify myself. Now, I think the fact that we already had the tabling motion, we had a second on that, I think that needs to actually be voted on as well. I mean, these have both been placed before, and to come in now and start to withdraw the original thing
The
after we
tabling motion
withdrew-
was actually withdrawn already by Councilman Barrett and the second. Both of those were withdrawn, so the tabling is not even on it's not even available anymore.
Right, but it was seconded, so it was on the table, and then but it was withdrawn.
The second for the motion was withdrawn, so the motion was alive for discussion, but the motion itself was withdrawn.
And my preference would have been just to deny, just to remove the table, just to deny it, just to vote on it, rather than to
Well, so I don't think that you're...
I'm prepared to make that motion if it'll make the legal opinion go away.
Well, I don't want his legal opinion to be such that he's suggesting we should deny it. I think he means that we should just take our action on it, whether to approve or deny it. If you want to make the motion to table it, I will second that motion. I think it's a good idea.
I'll move to table it.
Wait a minute. Y'all withdrew your motion and second from the,
Or you can go back to
No,
where it was.
that,
You
what
guys
he's,
had
what
it
he's
on.
saying is we can't do that. So it'll be, correct. It's on the table via Paul Tisdale and a second by Councilman Deming. There's a motion to table, subject to call by Councilman Guines, seconded by Councilman Deming. If there's no further discussion on this motion to table, subject to call, which could be after the DRC opportunity, or do we need to state that in our motion?
That's correct. I would like for y'all to give him some direction and say that he goes to DRC first and then comes back. That'll give us a chance to get a lot of the questions answered.
So, Mr. Guines, would you amend your motion subject to the
Subject to-
DRC?
Yes, subject to DRC, absolutely.
And I'll second that motion to table this subject to DRC approval or hearing. All in favor, signal with the raise of your hand.
Can I ask a question?
You
before
can
we
ask
vote?
a question.
So is this being tabled? So if he comes to DRC, is this with a plan or is this for a request to change the zoning of the property?
If he goes to DRC, he would have to submit the layout of the land. He wouldn't have to go to the expense of designing the construction plans for the building, but he is going to have to invest in showing us ingress and egress and those kind of things, drainage, parking.
But ultimately, what we have on the table now is still a hotel, which doesn't fit the zoning.
Well, this would give us an idea, an opportunity to get more understanding of the project and the intent itself. And that's what he's saying. The DRC, he's going to have to really
They come up with a
develop.
hotel zoning, if the zoning is not proper.
We still have the opportunity to cancel it.
All right.
Any other discussion on the motion to table? All in favor, signal with raise your hand. 1. We have 3. The motion fails. It was Newman, Guines, and Deming, 4, and then the other 3 are against. So it does not gain a majority. It fails. So we're back to the actual.
And if I understood the creeping opinion, it would be better off to deny.
That is not what his legal opinion was. His legal opinion was it was better to act on it now since we've put it on the table.
Good catch,
Is that a
Mr. Deming.
correct affirmation of your legal opinion?
Yeah. Is it appropriate then, as a matter of procedure, to withdraw my motion at this time then?
I think that's what our attentive legal opinions ruled against. I think he said that it would not be appropriate to do that, and it would be more appropriate, because it's been on the table for discussion, that we should take action. However, we could also call for a public hearing, could we not?
Yes, you could do that.
We could. Well, I
Hold
will.
on, we got another legal opinion, I think, creeping in.
Mopery with intent to creep.
I guess since we only have 6 people, if there was a tie, I don't know how the vote would be, but you could vote, and if there was a tie, then it would not pass for.
It would still fail. It would still be denied, right? It would fail as did our motion. But I think a public hearing would help us resolve a lot of the issues too. It would require Mr. Zane to come in and present his argument and tell us what his intentions are. Is that not correct?
Yes, before you call for a public hearing, why not let me go back and talk to him and see about getting him to go to DRC? And then I can get back with the mayor and, because he may decide to design a site plan. He might even decide to request a zoning change.
So would it be in your best interest to table it then?
Well, it failed for lack of a majority, so it's dead in the water right now.
Right, so if we move this and we deny this, he's got to wait a year or he's got to come with a zoning change. That's
If
his
you
option.
if you actually vote to deny it, he'd have to wait a year, but because it failed for lack of a majority, he can come back any time that the council wants to consider it again.
Let's vote on it.
All right, well, I'll call for the question.
If we get 3-3, then
I got you, then it doesn't fail for a lack of majority, or it fails for a lack of majority. Call for the question. All in favor of the resolution, signal with the raise of your hand.
All in favor of the resolution to approve or deny?
All in favor of the resolution to approve, signal with the raise of your hand. All in favor to deny, raise your hand. It fails with the majority, 4-2. So he'll either have to substantially change it, wait a year, or come with a zoning change.
Okay.
Correct. It was Deming and Gines versus Barrett, Lawrence, Newman, and Tisdale. Called their bluff and we lost. That will take us to resolution, is that G?
Resolution appointing Wendy Barth, PV, to the Municipal Election Commission.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion by Nathan Barrett, a second
second.
by Felix Gines. Discussion? I move to table it, subject, I'm just kidding.
Yes, Mr. President, I see Miss
Supposed to deny, she's got to wait a year.
I see Miss Peavy is present. Might you recognize her, please?
Absolutely, Ms. Peavy, if you'd love to come up and make a statement. If not, don't feel pressured. Mr. Tisdale puts everybody on the spot. Thank you. All in favor, signal with the raise of your hand, please. Motion carries unanimously, 6-0. Welcome to the Election Commission. Resolution H.
Resolution calling for a special election to be held on Tuesday, the 4th of August, granting non-exclusive electric franchise to Mississippi Power Company.
I'll move it.
We got a motion by
I'll
George
second.
Lawrence, seconded by Felix Gines. Discussion, Mr. Lawrence.
This is 25 years, right?
Right,
Every 25 years you have to do this.
every 25 years, you have to have an election to vote on your power company, I guess. I think 25 years ago, the vote was 400 to 20, but so there's not a big turnout, but they will pay for all the costs of the election, the polling, the setting everything up. So, and Mississippi Power is doing this in I think 13 or 14 other cities simultaneously with this. So. It's a routine matter. It's part of the statutory process of the non-exclusive franchise that we voted on back in April.
Discussion, Mr. Gines.
Yes, do we get a discount?
That's not going to work.
I won't vote for them if I won't get a discount.
I guess you can get a campaign sign, so we can see.
No question.
I have a question,
Councilman Tisdale.
if I might. Mr. Lawrence, how did you vote on this issue 25 years ago?
I voted for it.
There you go, good man.
I was here.
How'd you vote on it 50 years ago?
The one, 25.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence.
I had my bottle.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We'll move to Resolution I.
Resolution determining and allocating certain distribution of funds.
I'll move it.
Moved by George Lawrence, seconded by
Second.
Felix Gines. Mr. Lawrence.
Peter, go ahead and explain to him exactly what this you're referring to in this.
Right. This is a follow-up to the amendment of the ordinance we did last year about allocation of the gaming tax to the schools. Currently, the 10% fee is divided among all of the school districts in Harrison County, and the 20% fee for educational purposes is distributed to Biloxi School District. And we are stating for the next fiscal year, we're going to follow those same formulas and allocate those funds the same way.
Good enough for me.
Good enough
It's
for
good
me.
enough for George.
Good enough for me.
Guys? Further discussion? All in favor, signal to raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. We'll move this to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Paul
Second.
Tisdale, seconded by George Lawrence. Mr. Tisdale?
I do not have a question.
Well, that'll leave plenty of time for Mr. Lawrence.
He'll need it.
The floor is yours, Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, I know we have this, the $272,000. If anybody could come up and explain exactly what we're gonna do with this money. It's supposed to be to help the people with the short-term, with rental problem, but they can't afford it because of COVID-19. And this is really money that we just utilize and that's already inside of the CDBG money, correct?
I'm Susan Pickett, and I'm the Federal Programs Manager for the City of Biloxi. We received a separate allocation of the CARES Act funds of $272 through our entitlement program, and we're partnered with Open Doors Homeless Coalition to disperse these funds to citizens of Biloxi in need for rental assistance and utility assistance, and people that are homeless in Biloxi that need to be quarantined, moved from the street to safe housing.
Isn't this a limited amount of time, though? What's the maximum you can get for that?
It's a 3 month.
3 months.
3 months. It's a one-time 3 months for each person that qualifies, and it's based on need, and it follows all the CDBG guidelines for low and mod, 80% of medium income or less.
Okay, thank you. The only other one was, Jay, opinion on this, Jay, is the decrease, oh, you said, 60-something thousand dollars? This is with the causeway, okay. You up, Christie? That's good.
My turn again.
All right, take care of this then, let's hear it.
For the $60,000 decrease, that's just the remaining funds that we didn't use in the grant. So we're just doing the amendment just to kind of clean up the paperwork with the state.
So you gotta move it to somewhere else.
No, we don't get to move it to somewhere else. We basically, the state gets to reallocate it, I guess, through the program.
Okay. That's about it.
Councilwoman Newman? Councilman Guines?
Good. I'm good.
Councilman Barrett?
I have nothing.
Mr. Mayor, on I, the Sanger Theater, the change order, and unfortunately, I didn't read any of the attachments. I just read the resolution. We seem to be adding, what, another 7,000 or approximately 7,000 to the $2.3 million contract?
Yes, let me look at it again. This was for the fire sprinkler, some issues that we were having with the fire sprinkler system. And also we weren't sure where the roof drains went to from the roof, where they connect underground instead of just dumping out in the parking lot. So it was some money to camera those and kind of see where they're connected underground. And yes, we are adding 7,000 to it.
Where's that 7,000 coming from?
It's money that's in the budget for that project, in that capital projects budget.
Sorry, Councilman
It's
Tisdale.
not a contingency fund, it's unencumbered funds.
Unencumbered funds in that project?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have anything further to discuss regarding the consent agenda. What's that? Hurry. Let it be noted, George Lawrence is out of the room. All in favor, please signal with raise your hands. I'm just kidding. Call for the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. There are some exceptions, though, that I'm aware of. I am against both B, Boy, Beta, and I, Irene, Igloo. Councilman Tisdale, do you have any opposition?
Not a one.
Councilwoman Newman? Councilman Guines?
No.
Councilman Barrett?
I'm good.
I'm sorry?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, that will be all for the exceptions. Do I have a, well, I don't have, I think we have, I'm on a different screen. We have some code enforcement hearings. If you would read A.
Item A on the agenda, Gulf Shore Hospitality, Inc., 950 Beach Boulevard. That case has been resolved. Item B, Gulf Shore Hospitality, Inc., 956 Beach Boulevard. That case has been resolved. Item C, Frank G. Parker Estate, 176 Daisy Street. That property is still in violation.
Is there anybody here on behalf of Frank G. Parker Estate, 176 Daisy Street? There being none, this hearing is closed.
Item D, Frank G. Parker Estate, 180 Daisy Street. This property is still in violation.
Again, is there anybody here on behalf of Frank G. Parker's estate or 180 Daisy Street? There being none, this hearing is closed.
Item E, State of Mississippi, attention Derek Cooper, 316 Strange. This property is still in violation.
Thank you.
We actually have a letter from the state.
That's what I was going to ask you. Go
Okay,
ahead.
yeah. We have a letter from the state giving us permission to cut the grass. But what we're doing, since we can't really build a state, like we do other properties, we're allowing the charges, the cost of the cleanup to accumulate so that if the property is ever recovered by someone, then those charges are there. And hopefully the city would be able to recover our costs that we expended.
So we'd only recover if there's a transfer from the state to a private entity. Is that what I'm saying? Is that what I'm hearing?
This would also allow us to make application to the state to turn the property over to the city, and we can say, yeah, they can't give it to us. Let's say if the property is worth $5,000 in their eyes, if we have $5,000 in cleanup, then they essentially will turn the property over to us. So
Okay.
it'll allow us to take it and put it back, sell it and put it back on tax rolls.
Sounds like a shopkeeper or whatever that shop holders lien auto mechanics use, but I like it. Is anybody here on behalf of State of Mississippi, attention Derek Cooper, or 316 Strange Avenue? There being none, this hearing is closed. We have one more. We have Welsh Family Limited Partnership.
It's on page 2. Welch Family Limited Partnership, 0 Beach Boulevard. That case has been resolved.
Thank you, Director Creel. That'll conclude code enforcements. We'll move on to the routine agenda. Do I have a motion? I have a motion by Paul Tisdale. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Felix Skynes. Discussion, Mr. Tisdale.
I yield to the gentleman in Ward 1.
Mr. Ward 1, gentlemen.
All right.
Discussion.
I like that, Mr. Gentleman, Mr. Gentleman. All right, P.J. Bide, you're the only one left in the room. How about any money coming in? Oh, there's Fofo hiding over there. I thought that was Kenny Glavin.
You heard it here first.
All right. Thank you.
Councilman Guys, discussion?
I'm good. I yield to George, the old guy.
Any further discussion on the council regarding the routine agenda? There being none, all in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Do I have a motion to recess?
Move it.
Second.
Motion by George Lawrence, that's as fast as I've ever heard a motion anything. Seconded by Paul Tisdale. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We're in recess.